So, hello again, everybody. I had to split my lesson in two because it was uh, quite long. And so, here I am again to you. And the last slide that I showed you was about the ending, the actual ending of the novel, in which we have seen that the order that had been upset is restored thanks to another marriage, the marriage between Katie, Catherine's daughter, and Hareton. Hareton is Katie's cousin. It's not very strange. This usually happened those times that two cousins could get married. And Hareton was actually brought up by Heathcliff. He was ill-treated by Heathcliff when he was very young. Still, he looks like Heathcliff. He has his same characteristics, only he is much calmer and he is much gentler, and he will learn how to really love a woman. And so Hareton and Katie will have an engagement, and in the novel we are told that they are going to get married. But and we also have seen that shortly after Heathcliff dies, quite mysteriously, maybe commits suicide, we don't know. If you remember, I told you that Wuthering Heights is also considered a Gothic novel. Let's see how. Well, if you remember, I told you that Heathcliff and Catherine live at Wuthering Heights when they are young, and Wuthering Heights is a quite gloomy, dark house, always hit by strong winds, and the weather is always stormy up there. So this is very characteristic of Gothic novel, if you remember. So this gloomy atmosphere, always very dark, bad weather, strong winds blowing, not very much light, etc. But there is another element which makes of this novel a Gothic novel. Ghosts. Are there any ghosts in this novel? Well, actually, yes. Real ghosts, imaginary ghosts, well, I don't know if you believe in ghosts. If you do, you will find that these ghosts were quite real. For example, the novel ends, I told you, with the death of Heathcliff. During his last days, he was convinced that the ghost of Catherine went to search for him. He has been repeatedly haunted by her ghost, by Catherine, who had come more and more times to search for him, knocking on the window panes of his room. And of course he believes he has seen Catherine ghost, because he misses her so much that he sees her ghost quite easily. And so when he sees repeatedly the ghost of Catherine, he will ask, in case of death, to be buried next to her, in the cemetery next to her. Other ghosts are said to have been seen by a neighbor, a young boy who tells to many witnesses that he has seen the ghost of Heathcliff going up and down the hills, the moors, and that he was not alone. He was running up and down the moors together with the ghost of a girl, of a female. So, of course, what he is saying is that he has seen the ghosts of Heathcliff and Catherine, who are both dead, running again wild and free on the moors. So it's a very romantic ending, and I leave it all to you if you believe in ghosts. Of course, these are Gothic elements. Now, as for the style, Emily's style, if you remember, I told you that after the first edition was published, critics didn't appreciate this style. They didn't know it was a woman, the author of the novel. Anyway, they disliked the style. Well, actually, I tell you, it's a very immature style. Immature because we aren't told lots of things, lots of details. For example, remember, when Heathcliff disappears, we don't know where he goes. And this is mainly due, so there is a hole in the plot, and this is mainly due to the fact that Emily didn't know much of the world, so she couldn't describe, for example, cities that she had never visited. And so she just leaves the reader the option to imagine what happens. So we have some holes in the narration, which is also a fascinating trait of her style. Anyway, she didn't follow a strict chronological order of events. Quite all the story actually is told by witnesses, two witnesses, a man and a woman, who tell the story as in a flashback. And the different episodes are also told by different characters. So we have different points of view. And this technique is called oblique manner. And it is a forerunner, something that anticipates the modern style of the 19th century, in which the same scene is lived by different characters who see the same scene in different ways. Emily, anyway, used a very simple, clear and familiar style. Sometimes, if you read the original version of the book, you will find a little bit of northern dialect, especially when simple people are speaking, belonging to the lower classes. All passions which are narrated in this book are violent. They are extreme, out of control, exaggerated. Love and hate, for example, are eternal. As a matter of fact, the ghosts that boy has seen on the moors is maybe the sign that love goes beyond death, because Heathcliff and Catherine are still together, even if they are dead. They are still together and they are living happily on the moors. According to Emily, the physical laws which rule our lives are a continuous debate between two opposite forces, weakness and strength. And this reminds me a little bit of The Complementary Opposites by Blake. Do you remember them? God and nature are similar, because in both of them man can find both quietness and rage, again, two opposites. Here, Emily was very critical towards some aspects of Victorian society. May I remind you that she was born during the Regency period, but actually she grew up in Victorian times, and she was very critical towards that kind of society in England. Let's have a look at why. She shows her criticism against society by describing the clash, the struggle, the fight between the lower and the upper classes. The lower class is represented by Heathcliff, and the upper class is represented by Catherine, and of course by Edgar too. Catherine's preference for a marriage of convenience, remember, she chooses Edgar because she wants a rich husband, is considered a very negative thing by Emily Bronte, because it is the representation of Victorian materialism and utilitarianism. Anything is good, anything is valid, as long as it gives me satisfaction, especially if it's an economic satisfaction. And this is also a trait that you find in Dickens's novel. Also, Heathcliff's change from a man driven by his feelings to a man driven by evil, revenge, and ambition is the sign of the negative influence of the so-called civilized society on individuals. If you remember, when he's a boy, he's just a wild but free and pleasant young boy. But when he goes away and then comes back, he's a completely changed man. His personality is more or less the same, but all the negative traits are worse than before. Maybe because he has come into contact with the so-called civilized world of the towns. And so this also is a characteristic that we find in another English author, which is called Thomas Hardy. According to Thomas Hardy, civilization ruins, spoils individuals. So it is better to keep living in the countryside, which is more innocent, which is purer. And last but not least, I'm suggesting you some links, and I'm leaving them to you here. These links take you to the visualization of two scenes from the 1992 version, the film taken from Wuthering Heights. So Wuthering Heights has become a film during all these years, and more than one film was made from the novel. In the first scene, I'm leaving you the link with the link. You will see Catherine revealing Nellie that her love for Heathcliff is very strong, but nevertheless she has chosen to marry Edgar. And all of this scene is overheard, this dialogue is overheard by Heathcliff, who is hidden in the dark. And you find the same text, the same part in your book, in the text which is called I Am Heathcliff. And then another piece from the same film, Heathcliff has already been told that, has discovered that Catherine has died, and he is desperate and he is furious. And so look at the scene and especially pay attention to the different reactions that Heathcliff and Edgar have in front of Catherine's death. Also, this part of the film is to be found in your book, in the other text that you maybe are going to read or have already read. And last but not least, consider that Wuthering Heights was also the basis of a famous British pop song of the beginning of the 1980s. And it's a very famous song. I'm sure you have already heard it before, but you don't know that the lyrics talk about this novel. And I'm leaving you with the link to the video in which you will see a young, at least at that time, a young singer, English singer and dancer, Kate Bush, who was only 18 years old when she wrote and performed this song. She told that she had read the story of Wuthering Heights and she had fallen in love with the story, and so she thought of transforming the story into lyrics for a new song. So call your mama and your dad, and why don't you listen to that song together? I'm sure they will be very much surprised to know that this song comes from a novel, one of the most important novels of English literature. So I hope you have liked this lesson. See you on the next occasion. Bye bye. Bye bye, guys.